Memvo, right? We're on the bottom of the page. Memvo. And we are discussing and trying to clearly identify the principle that Kelim, although they're revealing the oir, the inyan, the essence, but they're not revealing it in its true form. Which means that they're revealing only the chitzonius. And the chitzonius, as we discussed, means only on the functional level. How this inyan affects something else, not how the inyan is unto itself, the essence. This will further be understood from the illustration, the example of koichas hanefesh. Hamislabesh or hamislabshim ba'ivore haguf. The koiches of the nefesh, how they are imbued and united with the volume of the body, the ivore haguf, so that, in fact, the koiches hanefesh function through the guf. And they become contained in the guf, and they become affected by the guf. K'moi koyach ha-seichel b'moyach sheberosh. Like, for example, the seichel that is mislabish in the moyach of the head, in the head, lahaskil, that has the capacity lahaskil. The word lahaskil means that it is able to conceptualize. Haskil means not just to understand things that are being shown to it, but to recognize the inyan on its own. You're looking for a copy?
Yeah. I think I saw in the small zone in the movie.
Might as well wait until he comes in. All right? We're just on top of Memzai. So the koiches hanefesh hamislabish in the guf, in the ivorim shel guf, as for example, the koyach haseichel b'meich sheberosh lahaskil. This is on the one hand, it is an obvious phenomenon. Yeah, we understand with the seichel. But we have to go in a little bit deeper and to see, to distinguish between the guf and the seichel. The guf is a physical entity. And a physical entity does not in itself have any sensitivity to anything outside itself. The guf does not know that there is an object here. How does it become aware of it? Because it hates it. But on its own, it doesn't know. Seichel is a quality in the brain where we can identify and understand, and comprehend and conceptualize things that are not forced on us, like the hit. Like we spoke the other day. 2 times 2 equals to 4 is not the real aspect of seichel. There is behind it in even seichel, which sometimes maybe we'll discuss it, not that important, but we can readily see that that is not seichel. Why? Because this is superimposed on us. We are forced to accept it. We're showing it. 2 times 2 equals to 4. This is not something that depends on our capacity for conceptualization. What is seichel? Seichel is something that is real to us only because we have seichel, not because it's real outside. That's what it's seichel. And like I said before, in reality, I mentioned a long time ago that there was a man walking up and down Eastern Parkway many years ago. He was a loner, but apparently an intelligent man. He had some background, someplace he fell out. He was a loner, and he had this little dog. This was his companion. And with this dog, he communicated. He trained this dog. And he trained this dog that the dog could sort of speak, do simple arithmetic. Like he would say 2 and 4, the dog would bark out 6 times. Like, genius. The dog is adding up 2 and 4. We know the dog is not adding 2 and 4. The dog is barking 2 and barking 4, and we add up to 6. The dog doesn't know that he's barking 6 times. But he was able to reflect his owner's command to bark 2 and to bark 4, which is also a training process. But the fact is that the dog, even though it's barking 2, he doesn't really appreciate the concept of 2. He doesn't know what that means. He only knows that if you say 2, you have to bark 2 times. A human being who has seichel, so even though, as we said, 2 is something which we can demonstrate physically, still it means something different to us. There is a seichel-dike quality to it. It's a certain reality. So even at that level, seichel is beyond the identification of the fact. And this is what he says, koyach ha-seichel b'moyach sheberosh lahaskil. That we have koyach ha-seichel in the brain, not just to identify that which affects physically the moyach sheberosh, but in actually a seichel-dike process, a seichel-dike quality. Excuse me?
You say the kelim can reveal only hitzonis of the own.
Right.
Right? So you got 2 and 2 like the dog understand. If we understand it deeper, so it's already.
That's right. The deeper is also hitzonis. That's my point. That's my point. I mean, if a person does not have lahaskil, he can only identify lahavda, what the dog can identify, then he doesn't have seichel altogether. Because a dog has no seichel, period. So he has seichel. Lahaskil, that's why the Rebbe emphasizes the word lahaskil. And this is a koyach, this inyan lahaskil, this capacity lahaskil, is not a moyach sheberosh activity. Because the moyach is a physical entity. And a physical entity does not have lahaskil, does not have concept. Is only affected by something sensitive, something that touches it. So therefore we see that the inyan that a person has seichel, this is nefesh, the koyach ha-nefesh that's mislabish in the moyach sheberosh. Because we see that he has a koyach lahaskil. Something unrelated to the moyach, to conceptualize something which is not part of the moyach experience. Okay? We are going to give a few examples and then show and explain, discuss that all of that, even though he has the capacity of koyach hanefesh, it's still the chitzonis of the koyach hanefesh. That's the point over here. V'koyach horiya ba'ayin lirois. We also have many examples of koyach hanefesh. And we have the koyach haseichel b'meich shebrosh lahaskil, and they have the koyach horiya ba'ayin liris. The koyach of sight is mislabesh in the eye, that the eye should be able to see. Liris. Again, we have here a koyach hanefesh. Because the eye, sight, just like seichel, consists of logic and then concept. Sight, for sure, consists of a physical part and a spiritual part. Because sight, that's on the simplest level. Now, when we go to a doctor and to an ophthalmologist, and he does something to your eye, he's not talking about koyach hariyah. He's talking to the eye itself. Because the eye has the capacity to be sensitive to light. And that sensitivity, for that sensitivity, the eye has to be healthy, has to be in a certain form, and the doctor is able to affect that. This is in fact what the eyeglasses do. They change the direction and the form that the light hits the eye. Whether it hits it earlier, hits it later, this kind of thing. So this is the physical eye, but that's not called sight. This is just the sensitivity of the eye. Sight is a ruchnisike koyach, like we discuss all the time. It's a marvelous, it's a miraculous koyach, that we are able to see the reality of an object without coming in contact with it. Like we always point out, that sight brings the world, the reality of the world to us more clearly than even touch. Because touch, we only know through our own experience. Whereas sight tells us that this is there, whether it affects you or not. The thing unto itself. So sight is really a koyach hanefesh. This whole inyan, to be able to relate to something that is distant and unrelated to me, doesn't affect me, and to relate to and to see it objectively, this is a koyach hanefesh. Only a living nefesh can know that there are true things. They just exist because they exist, not because they affect me. The goof does not have that quality at all, no matter how sensitive it is. Even the brain doesn't have that quality, which is the most sensitive part of the human being. Okay. Hare. So in these two examples, and similarly in Mizat Kuli, and many other examples, it should be understood that yesh koyach haseichel benefesh, the koyach haseichel is present in the nefesh, koydem shemislabesh b'moyach, before that this koyach is mislabesh in the moyach. Before it becomes attached to the moyach and functions to the moyach. The koyach horiya, and in the nefesh there is the koyach horiya, koydem shemislabesh be'ayin. Before that it relates to the eye. We'll discuss this in a few moments. V'sham, and there in their original, pristine state, without being mislabish in the keli, the way they are in the nefesh itself, hein ba'oifen nalo harbe yoiser, they are much more superior. Mikmoi hislab shusam behoivori, than as they are when they mislabish in the evori. The nefesh clearly possesses these koiches, and not only possesses these koiches, but as they are in the pure state in the nefesh, they're infinitely superior to the way they are in the Ivori. Or mikol mokoim, and still, ein koyach horiyah shebei nefesh, the koyach shebei horiyah in the nefesh, that as it is in the nefesh, cannot poyel oz liris dover hazulus. Cannot then, as it is in the nefesh itself, act and affect to see something outside of itself. Hazulas means something outside of itself. Hainu, which would mean lifoil peulas horiyah, to affect this action of re'iyah of side, k'moi shepeyelas ato, as it affects now. The koyach horiyah, just want to kind of bring it to us and identify these statements here. There's a definite koyach horiyah shebenefesh, and yet it cannot see a dover hazulas, cannot see anything that's outside of itself. If it cannot see that which is outside of itself, so what does it mean it has a koyach horiyah? What does re'iyah mean? So we know the expression in Chassidus that Chochmah is called the re'iyah shebeseichel. Mind's eye, seeing to the mind's eye. What does it mean you see to the mind's eye? If you see to the mind, you see to the seichel. So what it means is that in seichel itself, there are two different, very distinct levels. There's a level in seichel where you understand something, know something, because you have seichel dike raya, seichel dike proofs for it. This is the way the seichel is convincing you. And then there is a level in seichel that's called re'iyah. Re'iyah means I don't need to be convinced. I see it. What do I need to be convinced? Something I have never seen, I don't see. I need, like it's unheaded in a bezdin. When the witnesses come to the bezdin, the witnesses are interrogated and they prove to be true, and the bezdin is convinced that this, what the Beidas are saying, is true. Because witnesses are saying. Then there is another situation where the Sanhedrin themselves saw it. Something Sanhedrin themselves saw, they don't need witnesses. It's beyond witnesses, they saw it. And this is to such an extent that if the question, and this is a question of dinner nefoshes, you know what dinner nefoshes means? If the question is dinner nefoshes, so the Sanhedrin that saw it shouldn't pass in the shaila. Because when you deal with dinner nefoshes, you have to be able to be melamed zchus. You have to be able to argue against the accused and also to defend him somehow, find some kind of a loophole, at least the possibility. But if they saw it, because he saw the actual thing, then he says no alternative. He doesn't know it through some kind of a process that he can question the integrity of the process. He knows the actual thing. That's what sight is. So, in the nefesh, there is a koyach hariyah.
Why it's connected to the sechel, the soul, not understand what's called riyah shebesechel, not.
No, this is an example which I gave you is take riyah, not the sechel. This is riyah gashmis, but the similar inyan is in riyah shebesechel. Maybe I jumped a little bit. Riyah shebesechel means the same thing, but on the sechel level, which means that's something which I didn't see physically, but I understand the entire circumstance, and understand the truth of a situation in such a way that now it's clear to me like I would be seeing it. That's when the riyah shebesechel. And when it comes to the riyah shebesechel, then I know this, even though I know it only in my seichel, but it is beyond the limits of seichel that need substantiation, they need support, need arguments. How do you know? Once there's riyah shebesechel, the question of how do you know doesn't even apply anymore. I know. For example, I'll give you an example from the Gemara, not an exact, an example of the Iyah, but just a story in the Gemara, where the Gemara says that there was a Rav, the Amoira Rav said the halacha, and someone asked him a kasha, a contradiction to his opinion. The Gemara says, Shosik Rav, a Rav remained quiet. He didn't give him an answer. So you would think that since he gave him an answer, that means that he was refuted. But the Gemara says, but the halacha is kirav. How come the halacha is kirav? He was refuted. And if he knew an answer, why didn't he give an answer? The answer is, he knew an answer, but he couldn't formalize it. He was on the level of re'iyah. Therefore, it could not be formalized, it could not be expressed in words. Words can explain seichel. But the ear, just like if you see something, as much as you'll talk, you'll never express the experience of seeing it. So you couldn't answer it.
Because he was under the influence of he saw?
Yeah, he saw it. He saw that seichel. Where do you see ear, like beyond any doubt? If you would see a friend of yours, if you would see Yaakov walking at the end of the block, you see him from the back, would you know that it's Yaakov walking? Yeah. Could you swear on it? Would be 100% sure? Or you have rayas, it looks like Yaakov. It looks like Yaakov. Yeah, because Yaakov makes this kind of movement and has this size. But if you see his face, do you know it through rayas? You know that's Yaakov. How do you know? I know. You don't even think twice. It's not like, oh, it looks like Yaakov. It looks like Yaakov. Either you know him or you don't know him. Even someone that you don't see, like I meet people that I didn't see for 50 years. I have no doubt this is the guy. He's changed. I've changed. No question, this is the guy. How do you know? I don't know. Because I know him through a level of the ear. The essence. There's an essence. There are peripheral things like the size and his gait. You know what gait means? How he walks, how he steps. And these are all side issues, side proofs. And there's the person. In every seichel, there are these two levels. I mean, there are many levels, but there are these two, categorical levels. If it's a true seichel, it has the essence of the truth, and it has its effect. We cannot get to the essence without going through the effects. But when you go through all the effects, then you get to the point, to the essence of seichel. Now, the nefesh is not able to see Dover Hazulas. Why cannot the nefesh see Dover Hazulas? If it has koyach v're'iyah, why can't it see Dover Hazulas?
Not shaykh to this world, but this can only affect like through the body.
Which nefesh we talking about here?
Nefesh achyonis. It's a difference. Nefesh that enlivens the eye. The whole Indian
She's like ruch.
question, which nefesh is a much deeper question than misi eye. Also, three nefoshes. Are they're three nefoshes, but they're really one nefesh with three different levels. What?
Well, she's spiritual. She's not like she cannot see physical things. Only through the body she can.
The reason that the nefesh cannot see Dover Hazulas is because to the nefesh there is no Dover Hazulas.
What about in Gan Eden? Sitting inside the toilet.
It's not Dover Hazulas. I'll explain to you. I'll try to explain to you a general overview. Take a simple example, on the Anushius level, on the Seichel Anushi, Seichel Bahami, we always speak about coming into a room, like this room. If this room is correctly applied, correctly set up, which means that everything is in its right place. And everything in its right place represents what this room is to be used for. So when you walk into the room, you don't see, there are 5 tables, and there is a bima, and there is a chair. And that's not what you see. You see a besmedrash. Everything that you see is all part of that besmedrash. You see one thing. You see the primary reality that you relate to. When you're in the dark and you don't know what you're looking at, or not in the dark, but you don't know what it stands for, then you say, there are tables and chairs. So you have an idea what this is about? You understand? Then you know you have things. Zulas, a whole bunch of things. The nefesh is never at a loss to say, this is a strange land. Where is it coming from? What does it stand for? Because this exists only in the physical world, where there is hell and that you don't see any purpose, any godly purpose to start with, even a human purpose. Everything, is kind of, it has to be explained, and it can be changed. It's on a physical level. There's nothing primary. There's nothing that says that this chair has to stand here. There's nothing real. So here there is a Zulas. If you would see everything from a perspective of its function, of its truth, there would be no Zulas. So they say, how is it possible that you were closer to yourself than to your friend? How can you be komecha? You know yourself before you know your friend. How can you possibly be komecha? The answer is that when is it that you know yourself before you know your friend? When you're thinking of yourself from a worldly and physical perspective. But if you realize that what you are is a koyach eliki, so then you know yourself and you know your friend simultaneously. You're not any closer to yourself than to your friend. Like the Alter Rebbe explains that in the nefesh, the way it is l'mayla, kulam asimis, and not one is not closer to itself, not closer to itself than to others, because it recognizes itself from a godly perspective. I am because the Rebbe wants me, not because I am.
Let's go on the nefesh al-kis, not the nefesh al-chiyunis.
That's true, but the nefesh achiyunis in its level. Everything is in level. Nefesh achiyunis in its level, because nefesh achiyunis looks at the world from a like I said, from a Nushi's perspective. So it's in its level, it's similar thing. Surely it's not the level of Shalakis. The nefesh al-kis is easier to express it.
So in this level, we can say that nefesh didn't feel itself. She can feel everything like together.
It first sees the reality, and everything is part of the reality.
So you have the soul and reality. You know?
What?
So you have the nefesh and reality. Nefesh is not the reality.
The nefesh is the reality. The nefesh sees the reality.
But she's feeling I'm the nefesh and also reality, or she's like
No. Then I am part of the reality. I am a human being. Like we said, that as a human being, I have to eat with a spoon. If you go down to the real, to the depth and the finest concept of it, you will see that there are no two separate things. There's no spoon and a plate and a chair. There's just the right way, one thing. There is a human quality aspect, period. No multiple things. That's where the nefesh relates to it, simply. You know what I'm saying? Openly, without challenge, without difficulty. Not like he's relating to something difficult. Oh, I have to pick up a spoon again. I have to do this again. It's not a burden. It's part of its, not nature. It's part of its being. From the nefesh, from the human. That's what it's called. There is a human nefesh. Nefesh asichlis, nefesh or enushis.
But if the nefesh feel itself, so it should be zula, because I'm a nefesh and you have another thing.
The nefesh hasichlis, nefesh or enushis, for instance, on this level, does not feel itself as two separate things. I'm here and I'm also a human being. I'm here and I'm a human being is simultaneous. It's the very same awareness. It's not two separate awarenesses. This is why to act like a human being is not a burden. Otherwise it will be a burden. You understand what I'm saying? It would be a labor. It would be difficult. It would be something that's being forced upon him. To a human being, to act like a human being doesn't need to be forced. Because that's what he is, in essence.
And how it's connected to why soul cannot, she's ever kochriya, but she don't sit as well.
Dover hazulas, because there's no dover hazulas in its environment.
I thought the difference between nefesh al-kis and nefesh al-sechlis is that nefesh doesn't see Gashmias. And that the Nefesh HaSichlis sees Gashmias but isn't drawn to it. And it has the pull of Nefesh Bahamas, and its job is to not get pulled down to Nefesh Bahamas to tightness.
Regardless how you slice it in these levels, all that occurs when it is in the goof. Without the goof, it doesn't have that. Without the goof, the Nefesh HaSichlis knows Seichel. What's made Seichel? The truth, the way it is up to Seichel. It's no Zulas. As a matter of fact, like we said, there's a human quality, human truth. And then, because you're in the physical world, that human truth gets translated how that applies in the physical environment. Like we say, this is the way to eat. This is not part of the way. It's not formulated in the nefesh how you're supposed to eat. Nefesh is formulated that you're supposed to be a human being. You're supposed to have a sense of purpose, sense of respect. A human quality. And then, when this comes down into the goof, it gets translated under different circumstances in different ways. There you have Zulas. I give another example in this. You remember? There you will see the whole Zulas aspect even more clearly. You stand, I always talk about it because people don't realize how embarrassing it is. You stand on a subway platform and you wait for the train to come. The train comes and it's full of people. And all the people are rushing out of the train, of the car. The doors open, rushing out. And you're anxious to get into the train, into the car to get a seat. So what do? You go right hand to crash, right? It's not human. So you could say there are all kinds of arguments, logical arguments. Let them off first. You'll get there faster. On this, you're not letting them off. But all the logical arguments, they're all based on the real principle that it's not the proper way to behave. You don't walk into people. Even if you say there's a logical argument, that this is the logical way to do it, it is human to act according to logic. And if you act not according to logic, then you're not acting like a human being. Forget about the fact that you're insulting people. Just the idea that you're not acting logically. People have to get off. You don't let them get off. So what's going to happen? You're going to be, what's called a traffic jam. When the cars get stuck in the middle of the road, he can't move, right? Somebody wanted to make the green light. The green light stops and he's in the middle. He's here. The car's stuck, finished. The whole traffic comes to a halt. It's irrational. If it's irrational, then it's not human. Because a human being in the world has to act rationally. So it's not advantageous. It's just not rational, therefore it's not human. You understand what I'm saying?
Do not care about yourself, but see what the rational to do, not what I want to do.
The right thing, right. The right thing. And to do the right thing is human. When you don't do the right thing, you're not acting humanly. Not that you're acting irrationally. I mean, it's self-defeating. It's costing you more. That's not the point. So mitzad din nefesh, this is an entity. There's no zulas. No, let them off first because they have the right of way. That's not the point. It's just the right way to do it. In our physical world, there's a question, who has the right of way? There's zulas. But in the nefesh, there's no zulas. It's just the essential truth. when you come into the physical world, the whole world consists of a whole bunch of zulas, of Arabim, Rishus Arabim. There's not one thing in the world that consists of one thing. The table consists of a board with 4 legs. So the koyach hadyish of a nefesh is a koyach re'iyah, which means he could see a thing in a real, from a reality perspective, but not the dover hazulas.
In the Marazulas, it's more fit for a second, but not Riyah. Riyah, like.
All the koyches nefesh, all the koyches nefesh are present in the nefesh. The whole concept of even touch, smell, all the koyches nefesh are real koyches nefesh. But in the nefesh itself, it's in a much higher level.
Wherever bring so Sechel and Riyah, it looks like it's 2 different koiches.
They are 2 different koyches. And physically, they are 2 different koyches. And in the nefesh, there are also 2 different koyches. The seichel is the basis and the root of Re'iyah. But they are 2 different koyches. Rotzain is the root for seichel.
And only for Midas.
Let's not go there right now. We'll never go about it. Oineg is also seichel. Oineg is chochma, and rotzen is bina. It's a whole structure, okay? And everything comes to the midas through the seichel. The important thing to understand in this, we cannot understand how the kochas are in the nefesh. The important thing, and that which will help us understand this inyan that we're discussing, is the following. When you see is that experience of seeing, is this something that takes you away from yourself, from your nefesh, or is this a nefesh experience? In other words, when you see something, is that something that shocks you? Oh, how come I'm seeing something I'm not supposed to see? Or you say, no, makes sense. How come it makes sense? We don't know. The real reason is because you were seeing things before you even opened your eyes. Like I always explain about Shema Yisrael. Shema Yisrael Hashem Echad. And his bonus in Echad is Aleph Ches Dalet. Milo Matal Dalet Sittim. Yeah? So, why do you close your eyes? If you want to tell the Milo Matal Dalet Sittim, when you close your eyes, L'choira, there is no Milo Matal. Open your eyes, and then you'll see Milo Milo down the Sitri. And yet we close our eyes. Why? Because the Milo Mata Dalit Sittim that we are referring to in Krishma, we see with closed eyes. We don't need to open our eyes to see it. That we see with closed eyes. And by having seen it with closed eyes, then when we open our eyes, we are able to explain what we are seeing now.
When we say Shema Yisrael, we like see which the nefesh, how the nefesh by itself,
we see not with koyach and ne'oriyah nefesh, but certainly with a higher koyach horiyah than we see when we are confronted with a physical object. We know that there is a reality without looking at it. Reality of space without looking at it. This is a reality in our awareness. We don't need our eyes to tell us that there is a mile, that there is open space, a mile matter down city. When after we say echod, then when we open our eyes, then we just say, oh, this is what it is, and then we are able to connect it to, because even though our eyes see a dover hazulas, but we see it from, there's a truth aspect into it, and we can really make sense of what we saw when we had our eyes closed. If we couldn't connect the two, then we'd go crazy. I don't mean because we say Shema Yisrael. If that which we know with closed eyes is in total contrast to that which we know with open eyes, we couldn't survive. Understand? Because it doesn't relate to us. It doesn't relate to us. We're just prisoners in a strange land.
It's like a test of Emunah.
I'm sorry?
Like a test of Emunah.
Like that's the woman, yeah. So the nefesh is not. Likewise, the koyach haseichel, einay poil pu'ulosei. The koyach haseichel, as it is, the pure koyach haseichel, in the nefesh, without the goof, does not act in the same way shepoil acher is lapshusa b'meich. He cannot have the same effect and the same action that he does after that is mislabish in meich. He cannot possibly understand the same thing the way he understands it when the neseichel is in meich. Im shehu nala yeser, despite the fact that actually in the nefesh it's much so superior. So if it's superior, if it's a higher level of seichel, so why can't it understand the lower seichel? Elo the hiha noisenes. Except the explanation is that hiha noisenes, that the fact that this itself is the cause of it. The fact that it's nailo yesed, that's why he doesn't understand the way he understands it in the guf. He understands that itself is actually the cause of it. Mipnei sheha nefesh, because of the fact that the nefesh koydem yislabshus beguf, before it's mislabish in the guf. Oz koyach haseichel sheboy, then the koyach haseichel that's in the nefesh, hu bebchinas oir atzmi, it is in a level, and it has the quality of an oir atzmi. What does oir atzmi mean? Yeah, I just want to put it in concrete terms. You will see. All seichel that we understand by some external effect. Oir atzmi means there is no external effect. I know it from the seichel itself.
That I know that I life is coming from the essence.
Right. And even deeper than that. Even deeper than that. Because when you say, I know that I'm alive, how come it's not listening to me? It's even deeper than that. Because when you say, I'm alive, it has a meaning. I'm alive in our, consciousness. I'm alive and not alive. But Oir Atzmi does not know the opposite. Does not know things through contracts. There's only one thing. The nefesh, we know I'm alive because Baruch Hashem, I'm sensitive. I see. The nefesh knows that it's alive not by any kind of experience. It only knows life, doesn't know anything else. Like we said always, the sun does not know darkness.
I also cannot imagine myself dead.
I'm sorry? No, of course you don't imagine yourself dead. But when you say you're alive, what do you mean? I'm alive. I feel, I see. Some experience.
I think maybe it means I exist.
I exist is not I exist is not a conscious thing altogether, because existence is insignificant without experience. It means I'm alive means I'm alive. I want to live. Rotzen lichius, said Chassidus. Rotzen lichius is the deepest rotzen that a person has. And even that, even though it's the deepest thing, it's connected with a lot of peripheral things, a lot of external things. The experience of life, seeing day and seeing night, this is all part of Ratzon Yichus. So we have to try and limit how much we diverse, so to speak, from the Inyan, but just wanted to understand what it means. The B'chinas Oyer Atzmi. Oyer Atzmi has a very precise meaning. And the meaning is that he knows it from himself, not from any external effects. Like we said before, you must not rush into the car, right? Rush against the people. That's a human thing. But it's not Oyer Atzmi. There are effects, there are logical effects. From these logical effects, you know that this is the right thing to do. But you, as a human being, relate to it from the perspective that it's right. Not just advantageous. You follow everyone I'm saying? But still, there's some structure to that knowledge. Not Oyer Atzmi.
In this word we can reveal this or Atzmi?
Well, if one relates to Torah mitzvahs in a very true way, you can reveal the Seir Atzmi. I mean, because Torah mitzvahs are Atzmi. Like you say, do not steal. Do not steal has many ramifications. Many parts of it. You shouldn't hurt the other person. You shouldn't take that which doesn't belong to you. There are many ramifications. But there is also an essential truth to it. What is essential truth? I don't want anything that I didn't get from Hashem. And if you take something as belongs to you, you're taking that which Hashem gave somebody else, not to you, then you're violating the primary truth of your existence. To get that sense, that already relates, if you really have that sense, that relates already to the nefesh, to Amunah. שאין בחינת אל עצמי, שאין בערך להשכיל האסכולס כאלה, that is totally not be'erech, not in line, not in proximity, to be maskil haskolos koela, to be maskil such haskolos, shemaskil achar kach, which he can understand afterwards. Afterwards, when he was lavish in the guf. Shehem haskolas gashmi is biklal. The haskolas that he has after he's mislavish in the guf are overall haskolas gashmius. They have to do with gashmius. They have some kind of a way to relate to time and space. Gashmius does not mean necessarily something that has weight. But Gashmius means something that has a way to be described in time and space. That's the way in Gashmius. Bichlal, that's what it's saying overall. When it fosim begeshem, and these haskolos can be expressed in a Gashmius way. That the nefesh is not capable to relate to and to understand when the it's seichel, when before it's mislabish in the guf. Because the minute the nefesh is mislabish in the guf, the nefesh mislabish in the guf is in the brain. Let's say the first place is in the brain. The brain is a very sensitive part of the guf. But as sensitive as it is, it's a gashmi. Which means it occupies space. And everything that one understands thereafter has to be something that can be, so to speak, explained to the brain. Can be related to a brain, to a physical viewpoint. So this kind of haskolos, the koyach haseichel sheben nefesh, is not capable of relating to. Kiyim only lahaskil haskolos ruchniyois. It's only capable to comprehend ruchnis dike haskolas. K'mei hasogas de Gan Eden Kedema. Such hasogas that are being discussed, so to speak, in Gan Eden.
So isn't that typical stuff that we're talking about the Nefesh Elokis? We're talking, saying that giving the example of Gan Eden, the Nefesh Elokis is what goes to Gan Eden.
Yeah. I explained to you the moshel from Nefesh HaSichlis. It is true that Nefesh HaSichlis is only a keli for the Nefesh Elokis. And it has similarities to it, otherwise it wouldn't be a keli for it. And they can use a moshel for Nefesh HaSichlis to understand the way it is in Nefesh Elokis. Now, this same inyan, the way it is in Nefesh HaSichlis, it would not be in Gan Eden, but it would be, as we explained before, on a human, perfect human level, where there are no interference with the human being whatsoever. A perfect human level. Just like the Nefesh Elokis is in the Gan Eden, is in a perfect state, where it fully belongs. If the world were perfect, then the Nefesh HaSichlis would understand things the way they are. V'chein koyach ha're'iyah, likewise the koyach ha're'iyah of the nefesh, the way it is in the nefesh, roya inyanim ruchniim. The nefesh, the koyach ha're'iyah sees ruchnis dike inyan. It sees nefoshes, malachim, but it doesn't see gashmis dike inyan. Even in this world, a yid who truly purified, so to speak, his koiches, to us it seems that I hear every sound that comes to me. Because it's a sound, it hits my eardrum and I hear it. And I see everything that hits my eyes. But that is not true. I hear that which my koyach hashmiya relates to, and I see that which my koyach ha'riyah relates to. And there were Eden, not Rebbe's. Eden, but who is able to, who really worked on their koiches, they did not hear when you spoke Lashon Hara. Not that they didn't listen to, they didn't hear it. Why? Because they didn't hear sound, they heard what the sound is about. That's the real shmir. We hear sound and we put it together, like from letters. But if you listen to the essence, then you hear only that essence which is meaningful. Even by us, we have something similar. Like if you see something which doesn't have any meaning to you, you're not interested, you don't remember having seen it. Like nothing happened. But you saw it. What do you mean you stood together with me? I didn't see it. It didn't register. That's because you had no personal interest in it. But this we're talking about on a different level. That you can relate to it in your nefesh. You can relate to it. I didn't hear, I didn't see it. And it affects the physical experience or the physical experience. There is the story of the Rebbe Rashab when he was a young boy. He became very sick. And what was his sickness? He didn't see Gashmias. So the Marash, the father would come to see him, to visit him. And Rebbe Marash was able to see. And he was able to see the Rebbe Marash cane, the stick. That he was able to see. So the Rebbe left his stick, his cane by his bed. So at least he had some connection. That stick I was able to see. All right.
What was special about the stick? White stick.
That wasn't a Gashmizik steak. That was a steak that was yeah, it was used for Ruchnizik Koikas. It wasn't it wasn't a steak first and then being used for mitzvah. It was a steak that consisted of being a mitzvah. It didn't have a stick quality on its own. Which is why, kelim that a tzaddik was mishtamish, used, be very careful with it. Why? It's a keli. Okay, so he used it. Because it gets transformed. It has the koiches from the tzaddik in it. It becomes transformed. Like a Sefer Torah. You write Sefer Torah, and the parchment itself becomes holy. Not the words, the parchment. How does the parchment become holy? It's the same parchment. Because the Sefer Torah permeates and changes the mitzvahs of the gospel.